Hello and welcome to a new episode of Sport Isn't All But Bat and Ball, where today I shall be talking about the magnitude of growth in the rapidly rising sport which is modern mixed martial arts. I'll be talking about the certain factors as to why it's growing so quickly across the globe, and I'll be looking a little bit more in detail as to how the sport is reported in places like Australia, Southeast Asia, and over here in Europe. Many sports fans across the world are aware of MMA and its stars like the notorious Conor McGregor and John Bones Jones, but it was in mid-2020 actually, during the pandemic, that UFC saw a major boom in popularity. That was down to the fact that UFC's calendar was almost uninterrupted due to the virus COVID-19. In fact, back in 2020, Yahoo Sports reported that 3 of the top 5 UFC pay-per-view events on the US Sports Network occurred since the UFC restarted its behind closed doors events during the pandemic. In fact, one of those events was UFC 251 in Abu Dhabi, which saw 1.3 million viewers worldwide, 900,000 of those being in the US, with 400,000 coming from overseas territories. And I'll just look at a quote from Bellamy and Jackson in 2013, where they talk about the international literacy factor. That's about sport easily crosses nation-state borders despite differences in language and culture by its simple rules. One of the fights for UFC 251 event in Abu Dhabi was originally scheduled for featherweight champion Alex Volkanovski's home city of Perth. This was a bout between Australian Alex Volkanovski and Hawaiian Max Holloway. Now, Western Australia overturned its ban on MMA in 2017, and the media coverage of MMA isn't particularly making it to the front nor back page down under. Homegrown fighters from Australia and New Zealand get most of the little coverage, with ABC Sport only mentioning 24 times in the year 2021, content relating mixed martial arts. With fighters like Alex Volkanovski, Israel Adesanya, and Tai Tuivasa being big stars in the UFC, the sport is growing across the world, and the talent coming out of Australia and New Zealand. There's only one way that this can go, really, and the coverage will, follow coming back over to the UK, and it's much more of growth, really. Highly skilled UFC interim heavyweight champion of the world, Tom Aspinall, and up-and-coming fighters like Welshman Jack Shaw and Paddy the Baddy Pimlet, make it into the headlines every now and then, mainly for Paddy's antics, though. BBC Scotland are known to have posted every now and then as well about UFC middleweight Paul Craig. However, BBC Sport posted 98 times about the UFC on their social media in the year 2021, and 203 times for promotion rival Bellator. Now, following the rise in popularity in MMA, the BBC began to pay attention to it a little bit more post-pandemic and signed a broadcast deal with MMA promotion Bellator. Now, this contract means that Bellator events are shown live on BBC iPlayer and pushed out through BBC platforms. This shows that the British Broadcasting Company, recognised the growth of the sport and felt as though they needed to get on board and join the so-called hype. Now, the BBC consistently post about MMA and Bellator following the sport across the globe. Martial arts such as Taekwondo and Muay Thai are prominent throughout Asia, and Fighting Promotion One Championship is one of the main frontiers of providing a pathway for fighters from Asia. Now, with all the bouts shown on YouTube, Facebook, and ONE FC's own streaming service, the promotion of MMA and other sports like Muay Thai and kickboxing on their promotion are coming from Southeast Asia. Some of the world's best martial artists, in fact, fight on ONE Championship, such as Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson and Leeds' very own Liam Harrison. The Fighting Promotion's 100th event pulled in an incredible 85 million viewers across all platforms. Now, relating this to something that Maguire said in 2006, he said, "In one hand, it can be argued that globalization is diminishing the contrasts between different sporting cultures, but on the other hand, it is also increasing the variety of sporting cultures. The consolidation of one global mediated sport, but also the emergence of countercultures." And now I think that's really interesting to look at MMA with that sort of view, because like previously mentioned, there are so many different styles of martial arts across the world. I previously mentioned some just a moment ago, talking about Muay Thai and Taekwondo from Southeast Asia, and it's interesting to see how those fighters perhaps blend their style of that art into, wrestling, grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and other styles from across the world. There are now only 2 countries where professional mixed martial arts remain illegal, and in Norway, the government there, depict the sport as barbaric and something that would typically happen on an underground scene. Now, the Scandinavian giant only legalized professional boxing in 2016, and many in the country feel as though the legalization of MMA will soon follow. It seems more like a matter of when rather than if MMA will be legalized in Norway. In Iran, however, MMA is deemed as not a traditional martial art style such as wrestling, which is absolutely massive in Iran. The Iranian government believes that the MMA sport ties to violent behaviour and gambling, so any chances of seeing the sport legalised there seems slim at the moment. Now, looking at what can be expected into the future as we finish off this episode of Sport Isn't All But Bat and Ball, and what I expect to see and what the trends look like is that the sport of mixed martial arts will continue to rapidly grow and gain popularity across the world, and it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on places such as Norway and Iran and see if fighters do end up coming out of there and becoming successful with their own perhaps style. As we mentioned, that styles are being blended in different ways. Thank you very much for joining me. I've been Arthur Difford, and I shall see you in the next episode.